What's shaking, everybody? It's another edition of K and A right here on the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm the K part of it, Jeff Ketchum. Anwar Richardson is the A part of it. And this video is brought to you by another A, myperfectfranchise.net, who is headed up by Andy. Andy at myperfectfranchise.net, the sponsor of this video. If you want to start finding freedom, if you want to stop working for the man and you want to start working for yourself, but you don't quite know how to begin or get there or what the path should look like, Andy over at myperfectfranchise.net will help you get there today. It's what he does. He's very good at it. And there have been a lot of people on Orange Bloods and throughout the Rivals Network, subscribers, who have found instant success just by following him and helping, letting him help you into your next venture. Today on War, we're talking about the Texas A&M Aggies, who have sunken further into the sunken place, even more so than the 5-3 Texas Longhorns. You've got an A&M program right now for the last few weeks that can't seem to stop talking about the $90 million that they owe their head coach on a buyout. And the question inside of all of this A&M turmoil that exists is whether or not Texas can do enough on the field that they can potentially take advantage of A&M's fall this season, whether it's in recruiting with the likes of David Hicks or Anthony Hill or through the portal with somebody like Evan Stewart. There's a place for some teams to pounce on this A&M tragic season. And the question is whether or not Texas is able to be the team that can do the pouncing.
Yeah, I mean, look, clearly, obviously, things aren't going well from an A&M perspective as far as the season's concerned. They're sitting here, catch at 3-4. They've lost 3 straight games. Mississippi State, Bama, a game that, look, I understand why A&M fans are upset about because there's a lot of things that contributed to that. But the play call at the end, that play call to Evan Stewart, like that should not have been called. Like there should have been a better play. That doesn't give you the sideline as an extra defender, but gives you little things across the middle. So I understand the A&M fans being upset about that. And, of course, the loss against South Carolina. And then you look at what's left. There's only one team that's currently ranked, which is Ole Miss, that they face this upcoming Saturday. But then they've got Florida, they're at Auburn, UMass, of course, and then LSU to close out the season. Yeah, you totally understand the frustration portion of it, and there's the question of, from a recruit standpoint, like, okay, which one is on the upwards trajectory and which one is kind of either flatlining or continuing to go down. And like the way it looks like from A&M, and then the questions about Jimbo Fisher and what he really is and who he is and as a coach and all those kind of things. If you're in the mind of the recruit, what you want to be thinking about and what kind of the selling point was not only NIL dollars, but this was the program that was going to be on the rise. And that's the place to be, especially when you talked about that Alabama victory, which seems like ages ago now that we speak about it. But, these kids got options. And my question to you, though, is who are the guys we're talking about? Like when we start talking about, Texas A&M and Texas, like who are the guys that are in the battle, that both guys are battling for? Because I'm kind of curious, like how this thing potentially plays out and who the key contenders.
Well, I think on the recruiting side of things, you're talking about maybe the top 2 prospects in the state of Texas, period. There's been a lot of talk about Anthony Hill, the linebacker out of the Metroplex, who is maybe the number 1 target on the defensive side of the ball this season for the Longhorns because they have such a huge need at linebacker. I mean, Anthony Hill is good enough that he could pretty much go anywhere and potentially start. But there's no question that when you look at this Longhorn defense in a year from now, other than Jalen Ford, there's nothing that's coming back that's been a positive contributor for the Longhorns on the field this year. So there's playing time that exists, and I think Anthony Hill is the conversation piece that won't go away. I mean, he's going to be talked about right up until signing day. I've been reporting for the last 6 to 8 weeks that Texas folks feel good that they can crack down and knock down that door to Anthony Hill, and that by the time you get to, let's say, Thanksgiving, that his recruitment might look a certain kind of way that is maybe different than today as he's committed to Texas A&M. I think surprisingly, another player to a player to keep an eye on is the number one prospect in the country out of the state of Texas, out of Katy, is David Hicks, the big time defensive end. Now that kid committed to Texas A&M, and Texas wasn't a factor really in his recruitment at all. I mean, he visited Texas, and Texas was always kind of on the peripheral of his recruitment, but never quite at the very top. I think there are some signs that there could at least be some interest there. And if the A&M season and the trajectory of that program continues to take a hit and continues to look like it's in a bit of a free fall, that kid's got a couple of months before he has to make a decision. He could even push it to January if he absolutely needed to and felt like he needed to take his time before making a decision. You've got those two guys in recruiting that are paramount to both programs' recruitment this year on the defensive side of the ball. Texas not having a commitment from either of those guys leaves the defensive side of the ball a little more empty-handed than they would like to be. Obviously, if you're A&M, as bad as things are, you've got commitments from the top two prospects in the state, 2 5-stars you can hang your hat on should you lose those to Texas or anybody else. So it would be a significant blow to a program right now that has a head coach that's under a lot of fire right now. I mean, whether it's should he keep his job? Should he hire an offensive coordinator? What should he do? Because things just aren't going well. It's a program that's got real questions at the quarterback position. Connor Weigman is a true freshman who is he's not quite as highly rated as Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning, but he's a borderline 5-star prospect that's supposed to be the future of that program. There's some thought that he's unhappy, that he might not be in it for the long haul. You've seen young running backs in that program start to not show up for practice. You've seen guys like Evan Stewart, who for weeks has been in the rumor mill as a potential portal candidate that I think Texas would be very interested in. They've got a number. I can't even keep track of the number of prospects from that number one overall recruiting class from just a few months ago that are so unhappy that they may be out the door and in the portal in a matter of days, weeks, or months, one of whom is 5-star cornerback Denver Harris, who looks to have been suspended indefinitely if you look at reports coming out of Texas A&M in the last 12 to 24 hours. Billy Lucci from TexAgs reporting at 10:32 last night or 10:18 last night that at least 3 or perhaps 4 A&M players have been suspended indefinitely by Jimbo Fisher, all from the true freshman ranks. There's just a lot going on there, and it kind of reminds me of the Tom Herman era at various times when the circumstances are different, but when it just felt like a lot of players were unhappy. And how do you overcome a program? How does a program go forward when the guts of the program don't seem to be getting along well together? It's a real tenuous place for them to be in right now. And again, the question is, can Texas do enough on the field that if those players decide they want to leave, that Texas can appear to be the most viable candidate to take advantage of A&M's despair?
Well, what's interesting about that, Catch, because we know Steve Sarkisian is a really good recruiter, right? And we know that he's able to, get the attention and command the attention of a lot of all the elite guys. You're not going to sign them all, but we know that he can command that. Here it becomes, I think, the interesting challenge, as I was kind of writing a couple of notes down to myself in that conversation. Texas is on the road. This after the bye week, they'll face obviously Kansas State. And then the following week is a TCU team that they'll have at home, on the road versus Kansas, and then Baylor at home. So there's two components to this, Catch. First of all, the difficulty of the schedule that they have. Like, all these teams have winning records. We don't know what they'll look like, what that split will look like over the next 4. Here's the other thing, though, Catch. The other part of that's also a catch. They probably only have time to really pull off one good recruiting weekend, and that would be the TCU weekend, because Baylor will be right after Thanksgiving. And so it's hard to get a lot of kids to have family things, playoffs, and the football, whatever the case may be, but that game's going to be on a Friday. So it'll be hard to get kids on campus the day after Thanksgiving, especially if they have games, whatever the case may be. That really only leaves one recruiting weekend that you can really bring guys in, and that's going to be the TCU weekend. And, oh, by the way, you're facing the number 1 team in the conference that weekend. So, you want to be able, if you're going to put your best foot forward, you would have loved for that, maybe Kansas at home or something to that effect, which I say that, and, that happened last year. So, put an asterisk by that. But knowing that you only have one more game, that if you can try to entice these guys in, you probably want to bring them in midweek more if you could, potentially. But again, it's hard with practices. But I just think the phone conversations are good. You got to hope that maybe these guys have good enough relationships. But I don't know if you can just totally bank on get them up here for a fantastic weekend and that can seal the deal potentially. I think you got to bank on the relationships that you previously have or have established, because, again, the road ahead is definitely difficult, not just from a scheduling standpoint, but just from a difficulty of schedule standpoint as well.
Yeah, I think that I'm not real big on visit weekends this late in the process. Mm-hmm. It helps. I mean, depending on the prospect, there's no question that it can help. It's a little bit like having something in the oven for a couple. It's like cooking along a brisket or like a roast. It's been in the oven for hours, and then 30 minutes before it's about to be served, you're like, oh crap, I forgot to do this. And you start messing with it a little bit. Mm-hmm. These kids in this 2023 recruiting class have been recruited for more than 24 months. Now we're in the last couple of months. I think more so than bringing them in for game visits. Mm-hmm. If you can, you want to bring them in right after the season's over for an official visit, mm-hmm. before that first signing date in mid-December. So, that weekend after the season finale against Baylor, I think you want to try to bring kids in. If you can, that's when you'd like to bring an Anthony Hill in, a David Hicks. In the case of Hicks, he hasn't taken an official visit to Texas yet, so that's still available. Some of these other kids that you'd want to target in recruiting in general have already visited Texas. For instance, Anthony Hill has already taken an official visit to Texas. So the question gets to be, with each of these kids, can you just – I think you mentioned it. It's about the relationship that exists. I think Texas has the relationships in place. What it has to be able to do at the end of this season is, if A&M has just crashed, if they've just self-imploded, can Texas by itself stand off into the slight distance and say, we're on the upward trajectory. Look at how we finished this season. Look at the year that we've had off of last season. Look at Quinn and Arch and Jonte Cook and all of the positive things that we have going. And look at the fact that our players, we've got really good chemistry in the locker room on top of all of that. I think that more than anything else has to be the thing that entice. And, oh, by the way, the NIL program would help a lot. Where Texas has struggled against Texas A&M in recruiting with high school kids is that the word on the street has always been that A&M is more of an upfront rather than a get put on layaway and you get your money down the line. When it comes to guys in the transfer portal, though, Texas is really strong on NIL front. I mean, we can point to a situation like with Isaiah Nayor last year where it looked like he had committed to Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And it was Texas's ability to put NIL opportunities in front of him and say, should you come here, you can do more, you can make more. I think that helps with a guy like Evan Stewart in the portal. They've got to be able, with the high school kids, they've got to be able to explain and show them that they can do the same things at Texas than they can do at Texas A&M. The same things that have happened at Texas A&M that helped them get the #1 overall recruiting class are part of the reasons why they've been able to get commitments from Anthony Hill and David Hicks early on. If you're Texas, you've got to be able, when they ask the question of how do you guys do for us what Texas A&M is going to do for us, you've got to have good answers. And if Texas can have good answers and not say things like, let me get back to you, I gotta dig around and see what we can do, and I gotta ask some questions, and we gotta count some pennies. And no, if they're ready to go and they have their ducks in a row, I think all of this can come together. But it really will need to be a perfect storm, because I don't know that if Anthony Hill or David Hicks can go to Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State or anywhere else in the country they want to go to as an option, and Texas is sitting at 7-5, I think Texas has a problem. I think Texas has to finish 8-4 or better and really give the appearance of a program that going into 2023 is ready to take off and isn't a JV version of despair like A&M is, right? Texas isn't there, but they're 5-3 and unranked right now. And, you know, at some point it's like, oh, you're the tallest short person. A&M is 3-4, Texas is 5-3, but they're both unranked and not nationally relevant right now. And I think that Texas has to, in order to pull some of this off and to take advantage of what clearly is an A&M program that's headed in the wrong direction, you've got to prove you're headed in the right direction. I don't know. On the surface, that's not as easy to convince someone of as you'd like to be able to.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things that works for both programs, that works for Texas and also works for Texas A&M. Signing day actually falls on December 21st this year.
A little bit later.
So that gives you a lot of time to sell the program, and this gives you a lot of time to spin the program. So whatever you want to do, whether you're A&M side and you want to spin what's going on, or you're the Texas side and you want to sell what's going on, either way, waiting until December 21st before you have to wait to sign, that's a long time. That's a long time. And there's a long time between the final game of the season, which for, Texas will be on November 25th. I mean, you're talking about giving a team nearly a month, for Texas to really sell, get guys on campus. Come on, this is what's going on. This is the vision, the future, all that other type of stuff. The flip side is also gives A&M the same side to the same amount of time to repair. Hey, this thing may have gone off the rails, but this is why we need you. Get back on campus, get back in the fold. This come on, don't leave us now. Having that extra time, which really amounts to, it seems like almost an extra week, typically, which is going to be interesting because there's a lot of kids who are actually out of school at that point when they do their signing day. So that's just a quick sidebar. So I think that it probably helps and benefits, both programs. But to what your point is, look, if you're a kid and you're going to leave your commitment from A&M and Texas is selling you on something, it can't be equal. All things can't be equal. It's got to be, this is the clear advantage and here's why. So we can't be looking at, you can't be selling hey, man, we finished, 6-6. Here we are. Hey, we finished 7-7. What do you think about that? You like that?
That's better than A&M. That's not enough.
Correct. We're going to the Texas Bowl in a couple of weeks. How do you feel about that? Come on board.
A&M couldn't even make it to the Texas Bowl. Come on down. No. I think it's as simple as this. The door is open. You have to kick it down, right? It's cracked, but you can't knock on it and be like, hello, is anybody home? I'm going to open the door all the way. You can't do it that way. If you're Texas, the door's got to be cracked open and you got to kick it open and make everybody turn around and take notice. And I think that's the task. And this last month of the season, that the Longhorns have in front of them, they have a platform to do that. They got tough games, but if you win them, they're the type of games that will get you notice. Winning against a ranked Kansas State team on the road in 2 weeks, beating a top 10 TCU team at home in 3 weeks, closing the season out with Baylor and Kansas. You do that, and you're 8-4, 9-3, and I think you're going to have the attention. You go 2-2 in those games, and you finish 7-5, and I think you kind of shrug your shoulders and say, I don't know, but deep down you probably know. I don't know how effective a 7-5 season will be in trying to convince these kids that have huge lists of options that you're the single best option. But if you finish 3-1 or 4-0, I think you put yourself into a position to be able to do all of those things as it relates to immediately taking advantage of this Texas A&M thing that I don't even know how to completely label it, but they're dealing with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
David Hicks and Anthony Hill are listening. They are. They're listening. And if you were in the top 10, top 15 of the country right now, I think you might be able to put a wrap on some of these situations, but you're not. You're 5-3. You're unranked. It's better, but it's not great. And it would help Texas significantly if over the course of the next month, you're able to put yourself in the best position possible, and 2-2 ain't it. I'll give you the last word on this.
Yeah. So, it's funny you said about this. These recruits, we know modern day, today's recruits, they're all in group chats. And so when you talk about they hearing it, they're hearing it on their phones because they've got a group chat going with the A&M folks that, that's their A&M group chat. They've got a group chat that's going with the Longhorns, and they've got the Longhorn group chat. So they're hearing it from both sides, all the time. And I'm getting it on my phone. And so, this is not, when we start talking about when it's a Sarkisian and those guys, it's also going to be the guys in the group chats, their friends, their comrades, their peers, the guys in the 2023 classes that are saying, I'm still down, or like, man, I don't know about this, or come over here. Like, all those kind of things are going to be factors at play. So first of all, you members of any of those coaching staffs, you got to lean on some of those guys in your recruiting class and say, hey, Hicks, hey, everybody, like, hey, this is what's up. This is where we're at. I think if you're Texas, look, what did it say? All's fair in love and war. You've got to hope that when the season's over and the clock strikes midnight on that A&M season, you got to hope guys are going to the transfer portal. You got to hope that it looks like chaos. Like, I mean, you've got it is what it is. Like, you've just got to hope that it doesn't look good for the A&M side if you want to capitalize. If you and then of course selling your program, at that point, it is crazy. It is crazy. It was so crazy catch out. And the last thing I'll say. Just a couple of years ago, man, I mean, Jimbo Fisher, bell of the ball, like he was supposed to be the next best thing. So much to the point where A&M, first of all, they reward him with a major contract, and then they reward him again. And you're like, oh, you guys are 10 toes down on this dude. I think what college programs are going to learn, are going to quickly learn. Man, stop paying all these coaches all this kind of money.
Well, stop giving them extensions.
Correct. Like, the extensions is what's killing you right now. Like, stop with the extent. Tom Herman is living his best life right now because of an extension. Like, Tom Herman he not thinking about working right now. He's like, maybe I'll do some TV, maybe some crochet. I don't know. I'll do maybe some golf. Like, I've got $6 million a year reasons not to work. Give him an extension, and you're extending these guys, and you're bidding against yourself. Catch, that's the thing. Like, they're literally bidding against themselves because they're going on this age-old practice that can't get recruits unless I've got all these years left on my contract. And then you end up getting stuck and holding this damn thing. That's
now if you're A&M, you owe $88 million on that contract. Whereas, I know this is going to sound crazy, it could just be like 50. And I know that's a huge amount of money, but it seems like a great bargain compared to nearly 100. Because look, in order for A&M to get rid of Jimbo, they'd have to pay $88 million to Jimbo, which is a bananas. Then you'd have to pay out his assistant coaches. And then you'd have to spend the money to go get a new coach with a new staff. You're probably talking about $150 million at a minimum, 100 plus to get rid of Jimbo and his staff, and then to bring in a new head coach and pay that guy a 6-year deal and almost $10 million a year. It's just crazy money.
Catch, don't forget in today's football and the NIL money that you have to spend out as well.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy because you're on one hand you're asking your alums to chip in millions to pay players in these NIL funds, but then you'd also be coming to them and say, hey, in addition to the millions that we're asking you to pump into NIL like channels, we need 150 to fix this awful mistake that do you know everybody has to lose their jobs if you have to pay out 150. Like even the chemistry professors have to go. You have to completely start the school over if you have to pay 150 to correct your football mistakes. President, chancellors, everybody.
Chemistry professor.
The janitor's got to go. He's like, hey, man, I'm doing my best. I'm just keeping this place clean. I'm sweeping. I've been here for 30 years. It's like, well, yeah, but because of this football thing, we got to clear everybody out. It's a brand new day at Texas A&M. It's just crazy. Look, I'm Jeff Ketchum. That's Anwar Richardson. Do us a solid. Like this video. If we said anything clever or informative at all, subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 14,000. Get the notifications. And oh, by the way, if you are interested in owning your own business and starting your own franchise, myperfectfranchise.net is the sponsor of the K&A show. Andy at myperfectfranchise.net is the email address that you need to take advantage of to take that first step. But for myself and Anwar Richardson, we'll have more throughout the week here on the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. But I've got a show on Tuesday night. He's got a show on Wednesday night. The content never stops flowing. But until next time, we'll see you later. Take care.